Hi everyone, it's Lindy on here from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to be making a really fun Lift the Flaps graduation shaker card, and this will be a slimline card that we're making today. And we're using several images from the Art Impressions collection. So let's go ahead and get started. So for images today, we're going to be using the Art Impressions graduation set, and we are actually going to be using all of these images today. So for paper, I'll use the Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. And to do the front panel for our card, we're using the Fawn large slimline with sliders die set. I've taken that largest die. We're going to go ahead and run that through the Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine. You can see that it's a little bit long for my machine, so I'm just going to slide it down and run that bottom section through one more time. So let's place that card panel in our MISTI stamp positioner, and I am going to use a little bit of tape to tack that down. I don't want my magnets to get in the way here because we are going to be completely covering this panel with our stamping. So I'm taking all of the sentiments from that set, from that graduation set, and I'm going to just start positioning these on this card panel. And I did kind of move these around several times. I wanted to make sure that I had kind of equal space between the images. It's sort of like a puzzle, so it did take a little while for me to get this laid out. And I did want some of the images going sideways, to the right, to the left, so I kind of just, you'll see here that I just kept moving things around until I got it the way that I wanted it to look. Now, once I get this side done, I'll be cleaning off these stamps and moving over to the other side. So here, I did leave this in just so you can see that it did take me a few minutes here just to figure out where everything needed to be. Now I'm going to close the lid on my MISTI. I'm stamping these images with the Versafine Onyx black ink. Now you could think about stamping these images in the coordinating school colors. So that's an option here as well, but I'm going to go with the black on the white cardstock. I just think it looks kind of dramatic, and I am going for a little bit more of a masculine look. So again, you could certainly change out your colors to be a bit more feminine if you wanted to. And I will stamp this a couple of times. I just want to make sure that I get a nice, dark, crisp image. And so that is why I'm using the stamp positioner here, because I want to stamp these a couple of times, because you certainly could just take an acrylic block and go ahead and stamp these images all across this panel. So you don't need the MISTI to do this, but I found it a little bit easier. So now I'm cleaning off those stamps really well, and you want to make sure you wipe them down till they're nice and dry before you place them on your cardstock. So again, I'm going to try to figure out the best positioning here and fill in the rest of this open space. So I've got these stamps laid out again, and I'm going to go ahead and do my stamping. And you can see that there's a little bit of space on the right that isn't filled in yet. So we'll have to do this about 3 times in order to fill this entire card panel. And again, it's because we're using a slimline card, so this is a larger area that we're working with. Now you want to make sure you clean everything off really well again, and then reposition those extra stamps off to the right there, and then stamp that one more time. So now we have that completed card panel. I'm setting that aside, and now I'm going to stamp my images. So again, I'm going back to that graduation set, and I've got the little giraffe, the owl, and that little elephant. Now I don't need all of these images, so I'm just stamping the top sections of these. I just don't want to have to color all of that in if I don't need it. So I'm just going to stamp the top sections of these, especially that giraffe, and I don't need that globe underneath the elephant either. So I'm using sugared almond pink, light gray, and gray. And these are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. So these are a water-based marker, and I'm using my blender pen to do my blending. But as I always tell you, you could use a water brush here as well. Either way, whatever you feel the most comfortable with. And I do find the best paper to color with the zigs is the Bristol Smooth cardstock. It just keeps that ink floating up on top of your cardstock a little bit longer and gives you a little bit more time to do your blending. So I started with those two gray colors, and I'm going to just blend those in. And I'm going to keep that tummy area the lightest. I started with that sugared almond pink, and I put a little bit on the cheeks and a little bit in the ears as well, and then on the bottoms of his feet. So I'm adding the two colors at one time and then just blending them into each other. You could certainly do the lighter color first and blend that and then add your darker shadows, but I find it just as easy to apply both colors. And you could certainly do your blending also with that lighter light gray color. You don't have to use a blender pen, but if you want the really light shadowing, or if you want to remove ink like I'm doing there, then I find the blender pen is the best way to go, because it allows you to grab some of that color, remove it from your image, and scribble it onto your scrap paper. Now let's go ahead and switch over to the cornflower blue. This is a really pretty blue color. And we're going to do the same thing. Here I'm just using that one color. So again, we don't have to use two colors to do our shadowing. What I'll do there is just add a little bit more of that cornflower blue, and that'll give me that extra shadowing. I added a little bit of yellow to the tassel, and now we're going over to do our little giraffe. And I'll be using light brown and brown. The brown color here, it has a little bit of a reddish tint to it, which is perfect for this little giraffe. So I'm going to just lay down that lighter color all over first. And then I can come in and add some darker color to the little spots on the giraffe. And I can also add my shadowing as well. Now I did decide to add a little bit of the mid brown, and I'm putting that here on the, I guess you would call it the mane of the little giraffe here, and I'm just going to add that for a little bit more shadowing. Then I'll quickly color in this little bird using haze blue and that sugared almond pink. So now let's go on to the owl, and I'm going to do his pants. I went back to that cornflower blue, and I'm just going to add some little shadows along the side. And here again, I'm not going to introduce a second color. I'm going to just use that cornflower blue to do all of my shadowing here. And I'll even use it to darken up the little question marks on the pants. Now, if you want to check out another video that I did using this stamp set, I did an edge-to-edge shaker card, which is where there's really no borders. It looks like your shaker elements go all the way to the edge of the card. And I will link that down below for you, and I'll also link it on my blog. So again, I'm using that cornflower blue on the grad cap, and then the yellow on the little tassel. And then I'm going to use a light gray around the eyes there. And then I'll use beige for some of the feathers here on my owl. And I'll blend that out so it's very light at the tips of the feathers there, right above his eyes. And then going back to that mid brown, I'm going to tuck in a few little shadows here. Now for all the products I'm using today, they will be listed and linked down below and also on my blog. So I'll quickly finish coloring in this little guy, and then I'll meet you on the other side. So let me give you a closer look at the finished critters here. And these are just so adorable. I love these guys. So let's go ahead and use our detail scissors to cut these out. This set does not come with the coordinating dies, but we're going to do some simple cutting here. I'm going to just leave a little white border all the way around. That'll just make it a lot easier to cut these out. So I'm going to quickly cut out all of these little images, and then we can set those aside. So now I've got my card base. This measures 8.5 by 7 inches, and I'm scoring it at 3.5 inches. So that will give us a standard slimline card, which measures 3.5 by 8.5. And again, I've used the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock here. It's a nice heavyweight cardstock for our card base. Now let's grab the Lawn Fawn stencils. This is the cloudy stencil, and some Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink. I'm using my blending brush, and I'm just sliding that We Are Memory Keepers silicone mat over just so that I can place my ink pad on there and it won't move around while I'm grabbing that ink. It just kind of holds that ink pad in place for me. So now I like to start on the stencil and then push that ink up over the top of the stencil here. So you can see me kind of dabbing it on the stencil and then pushing it up. So now you can see that my stencil isn't quite as long as the card panel, so I'll just reposition that stencil all the way across. You just want to find a good place to line that up the second time. And I'll finish stenciling this entire front of my card. And there are 4 sides to this stencil, so you can turn it and rotate it to get different looks for your cloudy sky. Now, I'm just checking there to see if I need to do this bottom section of clouds, and it looks like they might show. So better safe than sorry, I'm going to go ahead and finish the entire panel. And that little die there is for the lift the flaps. So that's what's going to cut out those little flaps for us. So let's go ahead and grab that front card panel again, the one that we stamped all of our sentiments on. And I'm going back to that Salty Ocean ink, and I'm going to just add a little color all the way around the edges, leaving the center of that card panel white. Now that'll sit on the front of our card, so those little clouds will show through. And this is the Lawn Fawn Small Slimline with Lift the Flaps dies. And we're going to grab this one here that has these 3 sections for our flaps. And I'm centering it on the front of this panel. And I'm using my T ruler just to make sure that it's nice and straight. It's just worth taking an extra second or two just to make sure that you have that straight on your panel. So I'll run that through the die cutting machine. I did tape that down with a little bit of purple tape just to hold it in place. And now you can see that those score lines are created, and then it cuts these so that you get these perfect little flaps. I'm just folding those back gently, and then you'll see that that cloudy sky will show right through. So let's grab some clear acetate. Now we're going to create a shaker card. If you didn't want a shaker card, you can just skip this portion of the video, but I wanted to create a little shaker element here, so I'm grabbing a piece of acetate. I've cut it to the size to fit behind those 3 flaps, and I'm using some 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch score tape. And I'm pressing that release paper down with my bone folder. I'll remove the backing, and now I can position that acetate right behind those little windows. I'm going to make sure that it's secured down really well because we don't want any of our little shaker elements to pop out of there. And now I've got the little critters kind of positioned where I want them. So I'm going to use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, and I do want to make sure that I spread it out really well. I don't want any to seep out from behind there because it will kind of get stuck on that acetate. So try to be really careful when you're using the glue here. You could also use your double-sided tape here as well. So I'm going to add that glue to all of my little critters, and you can see that I'm picking this up so that I can slide the little critter right down in there. So I do have a little gap there where I can slide that in. Now here, this is a little bit long, so I'm cutting off some of the excess. Again, I'll apply that glue, just spreading it out with my finger and then lifting this up, and I can slide that right down into place. Now I like to use my Nuvo surface sweep brush that just takes away any extra dust or lint. It just brushes it away. And now we can go ahead and create the shaker element. So I'm using my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I always use this as like an extra set of hands for me. I just love how I can just set things down. And now I can start adding my Scotch foam mounting tape. I am going to cut this in half and place it all around these openings. Now you do want to make sure that it's nice and tight around those squares because you don't want any of your shaker elements to escape. So I'm making sure that these little pieces of tape butt right up against each other here. There's no gaps in the tape there. And you can see that there. You can see that that tape is butted right up against each other in the openings of those windows. So now that that's all set, I've got my little shaker elements here, and these are just some little tiny star sequins that I had. But if you don't have these in your stash, I'll list something down below and link it as well that you might like. So here I've filled those with the stars. Now you don't want to overfill these because you want enough room for things to shake around. And if you were using a thicker embellishment in here, maybe some beads or gems, you may want to double up that foam mounting tape so that you have enough room for those elements to move around. But since these little sequins are so tiny, I'm just using the one layer of foam mounting tape. I've lined up my card exactly with that card panel, and it does help to have it on this Make Art Station because I can use those little grid lines as well. So I've lined it up, and you want to press it down really well because, again, you don't want those little shaker elements to escape. So once you have that, you can see that you've got these cute little shaker windows. And this is just so much fun. So let's go back to the small Slimline with Lift the Flaps die set, and we're going to grab that star. And for paper, I'm using the Kraft-Stock from Tim Holtz in the metallics. We're going to be using that gold. And we're going to die cut 3 of these stars. And I'm using my Sizzix Sidekick machine to do my die cutting. So let's go ahead and glue those. I'm going to glue one on the center of each of these flaps. Again, just making sure it's edge to edge there because it is interactive. I don't want any of those little stars to curl up. So now I've got another piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I've gone back to that same graduation set, and now we're going to stamp those little graduation hats. I've quickly colored those off camera with that cornflower blue and the yellow, and I'm using my detail scissors and I'm cutting those out, again leaving a little white border all the way around the edges. And then I'll glue those right to the center of each of these little stars. Once I've glued all of those down, I'm using the little magnets here and placing them on top and letting those dry. So going back to the small Slimline with Lift the Flaps die set, I'm going to grab that larger rectangle there. I went ahead and die cut that out of the Bristol Smooth cardstock. And now I'm going to ink the edges of this very quickly. And this is for the inside of our card. So we're just going to place the sentiment here. And I'm using the Tim Holtz Sizzix Thinlits Celebrate Words script dies. And I'm going to grab that word congrats, and we'll go ahead and die cut that. out of that same gold metallic paper that we used for those little stars. So now we can go ahead and add this to the center of this little card panel here. And I'm just using some little tiny dots of glue on the back of the congrats, and then we'll glue that down. Then here's where I decided to add a few little sequin stars here. So I'm using those same little stars we used for the shaker element, and I'm just going to add a few of those sort of to the top right and the bottom left of our sentiment. I'm using my Marvy jewel picker to pick those up. Just makes it easier to place these little elements down. And now I can go ahead and glue this panel to the inside of the card. I'll use the magnets on the Make Art station to hold that in place while it dries. So let's take a closer look at the finished card. You can see all the great little sentiments we have on here. And then I'll try to show you the shaker element, but it's a little bit difficult to see that on camera. But take my word, they shake around and it looks really cute. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.